And we're back. Women continue to face significant challenge, such as earning less than men for the same work, battling discrimination, and juggling work and family responsibilities with little or no support. However, there is one organization on the front lines, and they're leading the charge for systemic change. Through advocacy, policy reform, and educational initiatives, they're working to remove barriers and build a future where women and families, as well as communities, can thrive. Here now to share more, we've got the Director of Advocacy and Policy at Women Employed, Sarah Labadie, and we thank you so much, Sarah, for being with us.
I'm so happy to be here today.
Thank you. When we look at the issue of women and equality and equity, particularly in the workplace, give us your perspective.
We are Women Employed has been, as you said, opening doors and breaking barriers, expanding opportunities for women because there are systemic barriers that face women, especially women of color, and we're working to remove those. We are driven by the idea that that there can be equity and equality for women in this country. And we're pursuing that by expanding access to educational opportunities, advocating for fair and inclusive workplaces, and building coalitions to support issues that we know are important for working women.
Yeah, and as you talk with policymakers, obviously this is something that has been on the forefront for quite some time right now. Are you satisfied with what you're seeing by way of legislative priorities addressing the need for equality and equity for women in the workplace?
I think it's going to be a while before we're satisfied. However, we have seen some great progress in the last few years, especially here in Illinois. One thing I'll name, that we are so excited that happened this year, at the start of this year in Illinois, is the Paid Leave for All Workers Act. So policymakers did support expanding paid time off to all workers in Illinois, up to 5 days of paid time off. And that went into effect in January. And then in the city of Chicago, at the start of July, we also got expanded paid time off as well. So now workers in the city of Chicago have both 5 days of paid sick time and 5 days of paid time off for any reason. So there's definitely a lot of progress that's been made around paid leave, around pay equity, but it will be a while before we're satisfied. We know we need paid family and medical leave. We know we need more funding for education, especially higher education, and more equitable funding for higher education. So it's still a lot of work to do.
So Women Employed has been actually active and working on this behalf for quite some time now. Talk to us a little bit about your vision and your mission and what your hopes are.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've been around since 1973, and we've been on the forefront of nearly every major advancement for working women in Chicago, in Illinois, and in the nation. We help to outlaw sexual harassment and pregnancy discrimination. We've worked to make family and medical leave a reality, though still unpaid in the nation, and we've paved the way for millions to get their degree. And that really, guides our daily work and how we're going to move the needle forward for women, both, kind of starting here in Illinois often and lifting it up to the nation.
And for the nation, obviously, getting acclimated or accustomed to hearing the word Women Employed in the organization. Listen, as you said, you've been on the battlefield for a minute, and you've taken some of these things to the front lines. And when we talk about equity for women, how do you see it playing out from a corporate perspective? You can legislate some things happening, right? But then there's also this corporate awareness where, companies are saying, listen, we've got to do better. We're going to take on some initiatives, stuff like that. How do you see the corporate perspective really embracing women's equity right now?
I think we do see some positive shifts in corporations where, they are taking the time to really consider how well they've been meeting the challenge. A few very prominent organizations and businesses have done internal audits, gender equity audits, to take a look at whether or not they're actually living out their values when they say from, the top down that they believe in gender equity. Is that playing out as it goes on? And I think so many of those prominent businesses are then helping other businesses see that this is a valuable thing to do, that really investigating their own success at meeting their stated values and visions and goals is something they need to take a look at. I still think there's a lot of work to do. We have, embedded systems, embedded status quo systems that we need to review, dig deep into, consider how we make changes. Things like sexual harassment. So one of the things Women Employed does is we do a lot of policy work, but we're also working individually with businesses to help them really go beyond the sexual harassment mandates of just a simple training, go above and beyond that training to really understand what their role is when it comes to ending sexual harassment, in their workplaces and things like that. So a lot of corporations and businesses are interested in those, just as many are not. And so, trying to this two-pronged strategy of ensuring that we have the policies in place that are going to ensure that workers' rights are being upheld and that they have access to benefits and a whole suite of tools that are going to make them successful, as well as working with or corporations that are voluntarily trying to take on really positive progress for women internally.
Yeah, I want to touch base about another particular area. Now it's financial aid and student debt when it comes to women in the educational process. You've got a perspective on it. Please share.
Women Employed, so we do a lot of work on workplace fairness and ensuring that workplaces have, good jobs and that all jobs are good jobs. We also know that there are so many women who are looking to either start school or go back to school, to upskill, to shift their careers, to just get a better handle on some aspect of their career, get a degree or a credential. And college is expensive. More expensive than it was 20 years ago, way more expensive than it was 50 years ago, to the point where financial aid is not just a nice to have, it's a need to have for many, many women. And in Illinois and then in the nation, we do have need-based financial aid. In Illinois, it's called the MAP grant. In the nation, obviously, it's the Pell grant. And those grants, you don't have to pay them back. They cover some of your tuition and fees and other costs, but increasingly not enough. There's unmet need left over. And what that means is that women are asked, women and any student going back to school has to find something to cover that unmet need. A lot of people choose to work like practically full-time and try to go to school around full-time work. There still may be unmet need, and that is when people have to take out loans. And when you exit school, women have 2/3 of the student loan burden here in this country, and that's setting us back. Setting us back as a society, that's setting us back obviously individually, in that our peers who don't have those loans are buying houses, can afford cars and the transportation they need, while too many of us are busy spending that money on paying back our student loans. And we would be in a much better place if we had more financial aid in the form of grants and scholarships and lower tuition and less reliance on loans.
Yeah, I think one thing that we can all pay attention to is the fact that student loan debt has really skyrocketed in the lives of so many people, and something needs to be done with that. I know it affects women. It affects too many people, and I'm glad that there's this relief that's out there for so many people who've had student loan debt, but there's still so much more that could be done. I look around the world and I see people who get free education or almost, it's not, it doesn't have to be as expensive as it is, but we've got a process that we deal with here in America, and we navigate. Let me ask this question here about the everyday, because women deal every day. What are some of the things that maybe that are systemic that women have to face every day by way of barriers and hurdles to climb that maybe we're not paying attention to, that the average person may not recognize?
I think one of them is women are primary caregivers still in this nation. So that means we're the first to get the phone call from school when our kids are sick, more often than not. We're the first ones to say, I've got to go take care of my aging parents. And we don't have a paid family and medical leave country in this nation that helps women stay attached to the workforce while they're being asked to do this caregiving. So what that means is that women are, when their family members get sick and they have to, be their primary caretaker as they're getting better, or going through treatment or whatnot, those women are dropping out of the workforce and losing access to the income that they once had, or they're trying to cobble together some version of work and caring for whatever their home life is while also taking care of family members. It's impossible. It's an impossible choice. And in Illinois, a lot of workers don't even have access to unpaid. Like 62% of workers don't have access to unpaid family and medical leave, either because they can't afford to take that time unpaid or because they actually don't qualify for it. So again, they're being forced out of the workforce when they welcome a new child, or they're coming back to the workforce, days later, days after giving birth to a new child. So I think that's one major barrier. We obviously know another major barrier is the gender wage gap, and unequal and inequitable pay that people face every day and don't often even know it. So there's what we need to push back on, and is ways that we envision how we pay people based on what they actually bring to the table, not the wages they brought with them in their old job. We need to be envisioning a new system there as well that ensures that we're not perpetuating pay discrimination from job to job, that's transparent on the part of both the employer and the employee, and that really kind of centers the idea that that pay should be based on what you bring to the job, what the responsibilities of the job are. And I just want to name, all of these things are intersected by other identities that women hold. So pay inequity is worse for women of color. It's worse for moms. It's worse for trans women. So, thinking about how all those intersectional identities have an impact as well.
Yeah. Share with us a little bit about the allies that you've, accrued over the course of time. Obviously, you've got some great allies and people who've been working with you on the battlefield. These are the people I say have boots on the ground.
Absolutely. We are a policy and advocacy nonprofit, which means for us, our connection to working women, we have some, but we don't have the same kind that a community organization does. So all of our work is possible because of coalition. There's really nothing we can do by ourselves. And so, for instance, with the work that we did to secure paid time off in the state, we had a 75 plus member coalition working on that. Fighting for us, alongside us were anti-poverty organizations, labor unions, community organizers, early childhood folks. It was just such a broad and diverse coalition who recognized that having paid time off or paid sick time, whatever, in this case is paid time off for any reason, was so essential to the health and well-being of families and communities. And so we work together with them. At the same time, a lot of the work that we do around sort of career pathways and education, we couldn't do that work without community college partners, without our state agency partners, and without, community-based organizations that work in education and training.
Yeah. So as you look at the work that's being done, coalescing all groups and, getting out there, responding to the issues that are out there, you've got lawmakers, you've got policymakers out there who are really the ones who can really drive this thing across the finish line. What's the relationship like between women employed and policymakers, given the fact that, yes, we are in this middle of this hottest election ever, but arguably ever, but yet and still, there's still other things that need to get done.
Yeah, we couldn't do much of our work without in coalition, but also without elected officials kind of shepherding this work through, taking it from, a bill, an idea, something that our coalition partners and women employed are working together on, that we're hearing from the community that is needed, and taking that from, idea to actual law or policy. So we do collaborate with policy makers from, the time the idea is shaped, getting their buy-in and championship, to the negotiation stage, where we kind of talk through the finer details, continue to push with them, Oftentimes it's helping them really understand the implications of certain decisions. Who's going to benefit if we make this choice in a policy? Who's going to be hurt by that choice? And when we're in the room with policymakers, our goal, Women Employed's goal, and often as a spokesperson for a coalition, is to ensure that the needs of women, especially women of color, low-paid women, are top of mind for policymakers. It's always an essential piece of our work, and helping policymakers who are working on dozens of things, if not more, really understand the implications of different policies is critical to getting the work done, and to getting the work done in a way that really isn't further entrenching the status quo, is making change for working women.
Yeah. And so, as you talk about working together works, right? What would be one of the highlights that you could say of how working together works from your perspective? Do you have one that sticks out to the max for you?
Sure. It's still in development, but elements of it are moving forward. So it's sort of an in development piece. So in Illinois, our public universities were sort of funded without any transparency. It was mostly political clout that got them the amount of funding that they got year to year. And as you can imagine, that wasn't necessarily student-centered. That was more university-centered. And from our perspective, from Women Employed's perspective, any funding for our university system needs to be focused on equity. It needs to be adequate. It needs to be stable, and it needs to be transparent. And so, with partners, including universities, including our Board of Higher Education, including advocacy partners and other experts, we launched a commission to really study how would we redesign a formula for Illinois when it comes to public university funding that considered equity, that thought about the students who have achievement gaps, big groups of students with achievement gaps. And in Illinois, that included rural students, adult students, Black and Latinx students, students from poorly funded high school systems and school systems, and envision a new funding formula that really focused on addressing the schools and the students at those schools that had the biggest gaps. And so the commission's report came out in March. We've just launched the bill, the start of actually codifying the formula that was recommended by the commission. But the work that's been done has been about 2.5 years of work, getting to the point where we have a formula and something that we could put into place so that students and the institutions that they attend are getting the funding they need to support them adequately.
And Sarah, before we go, I want to get the opportunity for people to connect with Women Employed and really have the opportunity to see how they can be a part of the organization in terms of support and advocacy, and then also just awareness. So go ahead and tell us how we can get connected.
Well, the easiest way to connect with us is on our website at womenemployed.org, but we're also on all of social media. Follow us on Facebook, on X, and on Instagram. You'll find the latest news about what's happening, actions you can take, information about things that you need to know about what's happening for working women and what needs to happen for working women.
Sarah, it's been great talking to you, and best wishes with Women Employed. Come back to us. We'll definitely want to continue the conversation. And as things continue to heat up and we know politically and things are on the rise, we may need your voice to give us a little bit of balance there. So love to have you back.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
All right.